He dared me to leave and cut me off, so I made him regret it in front of everyone. You know what they say about playing with fire? Well, my husband learned that lesson the hard way. And by the time he realized what he'd done, I was already holding the match that would burn his perfect little world to the ground. My name is Evangeline, and this is the story of how one dare changed everything, and how I made sure my husband regretted every single word that came out of his mouth that night. You want to know what betrayal really looks like? It's not just the affair or the lies or even the financial manipulation. It's standing in your own kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at a man you've loved for 8 years, and watching him dare you to walk away from the life you built together. It's seeing that smug little smile creep across his face when he thinks he's finally found a way to get rid of you without getting his hands dirty. But here's what Marcus didn't know about me. I don't back down from a dare. I never have. Started 3 months ago with little things. Password changes. Hushed phone calls. Late nights at the office that stretched into weekends. I'm not stupid. I've been married long enough to recognize the signs. But Marcus had always been clever, always 2 steps ahead, always making me feel like I was the one losing my mind. "You're being paranoid, Eva," he'd say, not even looking up from his laptop. "I'm working on a big project. You know how demanding my job gets." His job. But Marcus worked in tech consulting, the kind of job that paid well enough for us to afford our beautiful suburban home with a white picket fence and the perfectly manicured lawn. The kind of job that required client dinners and networking events, and apparently overnight trips to cities I'd never heard him mention before. I started keeping track. Tuesday, didn't come home until 3 a.m., claimed he fell asleep at Jake's after drinks. Thursday, emergency client call, that lasted until midnight. Saturday, suddenly had to fly to Denver for a last-minute presentation. The thing about being married to someone for almost a decade is that you learn their patterns, their tells. The way Marcus touched his left earlobe when he lied. The way his voice got just half an octave higher when he was covering something up. The way he'd suddenly become obsessed with his phone, taking it to the bathroom, sleeping with it under his pillow like some teenager hiding something from their parents. But the real red flag. The money. I'd always handled our finances. It was something I was good at. Budgeting, investing, making sure we were building toward our future together. But suddenly, Marcus wanted to take more control over our accounts. Suddenly, he was questioning every purchase I made, every coffee I bought, every dollar I spent on groceries. "We need to be more careful with money," he'd say, even as I noticed new charges on his credit card statements. Expensive restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel stays in cities where he supposedly had no business. A jewelry purchase for $847 that definitely never made its way to me. When I confronted him about it, he had explanations for everything. The restaurant charge was a client dinner he'd forgotten to mention. The hotel was for a conference he'd signed up for at the last minute. The jewelry. "It's a surprise for our anniversary, Eva. God, can't you just trust me?" Trust. That word would come back to haunt him. The night everything changed was a Friday in October. Marcus had gone to his usual poker night with the guys, which had become a weekly tradition over the past 2 months. Funny thing about poker night, it apparently required him to dress in his best cologne and newest shirt every single time. I was doing laundry when I found it. A receipt tucked into the pocket of his jeans. Not just any receipt, a receipt from Tiffany & Company. For a necklace that cost more than my engagement ring. Purchased 3 days ago. My hands were shaking as I stared at that little piece of paper. Our anniversary wasn't for another 4 months. My birthday had passed without so much as a card. So who exactly was getting a Tiffany necklace? That's when I decided to do something I'd never done in 8 years of marriage. I looked through his things. I started with his dresser. Nothing unusual. Just the typical collection of watches, cufflinks, and loose change. Then his closet. His suit pockets yielded a few business cards, some breath mints, and a hotel key card from the Marriott downtown. The same hotel where he'd supposedly never been. But it was his laptop that gave me everything I needed. Marcus had left it open on his desk, something he never did. The The screen was still glowing when I sat down, and there it was. His email, open to a conversation that made my blood run cold. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night, baby. Wear the necklace I gave you. You look so beautiful in it. The response from someone named Riley Peterson. You spoil me too much. What did you tell Eva this time? Another poker night. Same as always. She doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy with her little bookkeeping job to notice what's really going on. Soon I won't have to make excuses anymore. What do you mean? Let's just say I've been making some changes to our accounts. When the time comes, she'll find out that the prenup she never bothered to read is going to leave her with a lot less than she thinks. I must have sat there for 20 minutes, reading through months of messages. The affair was bad enough. Steamy texts, photos I never want to think about again, plans for romantic getaways funded by our joint accounts. But it was the financial planning that really got to me. Marcus hadn't just been cheating. He'd been systematically moving our money, hiding assets, setting up accounts I didn't know about. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. And according to his messages with Riley, he was just waiting for the right moment to let me find out about the affair so he could play the victim when I inevitably asked for a divorce. Prenup. God, how could I have been so stupid? I'd signed it without reading it properly, trusting Marcus when he said it was just a formality, just something his lawyer recommended. I'd been 24 and so in love that I would have signed anything he put in front of me. But here's the thing about trust. Once it's broken, it changes you. And as I sat there in his chair, reading about how he planned to leave me with nothing, I felt something shift inside me. Something cold and calculating that I didn't even know I had. Marcus thought he was the smart one in this relationship. He thought he'd played me perfectly, keeping me in the dark while he set up his escape route. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. Marcus came home at 2:30 a.m., reeking of perfume that definitely wasn't mine. He tried to slip into bed quietly, probably thinking I was asleep, but I was wide awake, sitting in the armchair in the corner of our bedroom. How was poker? I asked, my voice cutting through the darkness. He actually jumped and fumbled for the light switch. When he saw me sitting there, still fully dressed, he tried to recover with that charming smile that used to make my heart flutter. Eva, you scared me. What are you doing up? Waiting for you. I held up the receipt from Tiffany. We need to talk. The color drained from his face, but he tried to brazen it out. That's for your Christmas present. I can't believe you went through my things. Cut the bullshit, Marcus. I stood up, and something in my voice must have warned him, because he took a step back. I know about Riley. I know about the hotel rooms and the secret accounts and your clever little plan to leave me with nothing. For a moment we just stared at each other across our bedroom, 8 years of marriage suddenly feeling like 8 lifetimes. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I could prove. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. Okay, he said, loosening his tie like we were having a casual conversation about the weather. You caught me. So what are you going to do about it? The audacity of it took my breath away. No apology. No explanation. No remorse. Just a simple question like he was genuinely curious about my next move. I'm going to divorce you, I said quietly. No, you're not. He was still smiling, but there was something cruel in it now. You're going to sit down, shut up, and pretend this conversation never happened. 'Cause if you don't, you'll lose everything. The house, the cars, the savings accounts, all of it. Did you even read that prenup you signed, Eva? 'Cause I did. I wrote most of it. He moved closer, and I could smell Riley's perfume mixed with his cologne. Made me sick. Here's what's going to happen, he continued, his voice taking on that condescending tone I'd heard 1,000 times before. You're going to go downstairs, make me a sandwich, and then you're going to go to bed. Tomorrow we'll pretend this never happened. I'll be more careful. You'll go back to your little accounting job and your book club and your pathetic little life. And everyone will be happy. And if I don't, his smile widened, then I'll make your life hell. I'll freeze every account we share, I'll change every password, every login, every access code to everything we own together. I'll make sure you can't buy so much as a cup of coffee without begging me for permission. And when you finally can't take it anymore and file for divorce, you'll walk away with exactly what you deserve. Nothing. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, I could hear a dog barking in the distance, the sound of a car driving past our perfect suburban street. Normal sounds from a normal world, while inside our bedroom, my marriage was dying. Then Marcus delivered the final blow. But you know what, Eva? I don't think you have the guts to leave. You've been dependent on me for so long that you don't even remember who you were before we got married. Or weak. You're predictable. And you're too scared to start over at 32 with nothing to show for the last 8 years of your life. He stepped even closer, close enough that I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. So here's my dare, sweetheart. Prove me wrong. Walk away. Leave tonight if you're so tough. Show me that you're not the pathetic little woman I married who can't even order takeout without asking my opinion first. That's when I smiled. Really smiled for the first time in months. Okay, I said simply. I will. The confidence flickered in his eyes for just a moment before coming back full force. Sure you will. Just like you were going to go back to school. Just like you were going to start that consulting business. Just like you were going to. Marcus, I interrupted, pulling my phone out of my pocket. You really should have paid more attention to what my little bookkeeping job actually entailed. His brow furrowed. What are you talking about? I don't just do bookkeeping, honey. I'm a forensic accountant. I specialize in finding hidden assets in divorce cases. Did you really think I wouldn't notice what you were doing with our money? The realization hit him like a physical blow. I watched his face go through a series of expressions: confusion, understanding, and then pure panic. You see, while you were busy playing house with Riley and moving money around like some kind of criminal mastermind, I was documenting everything. Every transfer, every hidden account, every forged signature. I've been building a case against you for the past month. I held up my phone, showing him the screen. I've been recording this entire conversation, by the way. Amazing what you can do with technology these days. You can't, that's illegal. Actually, it's not. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of without your permission. I tilted my head, studying his face. You know, for someone who claims to be so smart, you really don't know much about the law. Marcus was backing toward the door now. His earlier confidence completely gone. Eva, listen, we can work this out. I made a mistake. Oh, you made more than a mistake. I started walking toward him, enjoying the way he flinched with each step. You made the mistake of thinking I was weak. You made the mistake of thinking I was stupid. And you made the biggest mistake of all. You dared me to leave. I didn't leave that night. Instead, I went to our home office and worked until dawn, printing out bank statements, email conversations, financial records, and every piece of evidence I'd been collecting for weeks. By the time Marcus woke up, hungover and probably hoping the night before had been a bad dream, I had everything organized into neat little folders. "What's all this?" he asked, stumbling into the kitchen where I'd laid everything out on the table like a war room. "Your homework," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "I suggest you read through it carefully before you decide on your next move." While he was reviewing the evidence of his own stupidity, I was implementing phase 2 of my plan. See, Marcus thought he was the only one who could play dirty with financial accounts, but he'd forgotten something important. My name was on everything too. I started with our joint credit cards, calling each company to report suspicious activity. Which wasn't even a lie, really. All those charges for hotels and jewelry and expensive dinners. Definitely suspicious. The credit card companies were more than happy to freeze the accounts pending an investigation. Then I called our bank. Turns out, when you're a forensic accountant reporting potential financial fraud on your own accounts, people take you very seriously. Especially when you have documentation showing unauthorized transfers and hidden accounts. By noon, Marcus couldn't access a single account we shared. Not the checking, not the savings, not the investment portfolios, not the credit cards. Nothing. Eva, what the hell did you do? He was standing in the kitchen doorway, his face red with rage and panic. I protected our assets from further theft, I said calmly, taking a sip of my coffee. Don't worry, honey. I'm sure Riley will be happy to support you until we sort this all out. You can't do this. This is my money too. Actually, according to the forensic audit I've been conducting, about 60% of what you moved to your secret accounts came from my inheritance from my grandmother. You know, the money I put into our joint account when we bought this house. The money I trusted you with. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That was years ago. It's all mixed together now. Funny thing about forensic accounting, we're really good at tracing money back to its original source. Even money that's been mixed together for years. I turned my laptop around to show him a detailed spreadsheet. See this? This is exactly how much of my inheritance you stole. With interest. The beauty of being married to someone for 8 years is that you know all their passwords, all their security questions, all their little habits. Marcus had changed our joint account passwords, but he'd forgotten about something much more important. His personal email. While he'd been busy covering his tracks financially, he'd left a digital trail of evidence that would make any forensic accountant weep with joy. Emails to his lawyer about hiding assets. Messages to his financial advisor about moving money offshore. Conversations with Riley about their future together once he was free of the deadweight. Deadweight. That's what he'd called me. But here's what Marcus had never understood about me. I wasn't deadweight. I was a woman who'd given up her own career dreams to support his. I was a woman who'd put her own money into our shared future because I believed in us. I was a woman who'd spent 8 years being the perfect wife, the perfect partner, the perfect accessory to his perfect life. And now I was a woman with nothing left to lose. The real brilliance of my plan wasn't in the financial maneuvering or the evidence gathering. It was in the timing. Marcus had invited his entire family over for Sunday dinner that weekend. His parents, his sister, his brother-in-law, and their kids. 23 years of tradition. He'd told me proudly when we first got married. Every second Sunday of the month, the whole family gathered at our house for my homemade lasagna and Marcus's stories about his successful career and perfect marriage. I'd been cooking for these people for 8 years. 8 years of smile and nod conversations with his mother, who'd never quite approved of me. 8 years of pretending to laugh at his father's inappropriate jokes. 8 years of watching Marcus hold court at the head of our dining room table, basking in the admiration of his family while I served and cleaned and played the role of the devoted wife. This Sunday would be different. I spent all morning cooking just like always. Lasagna, Caesar salad, garlic bread, tiramisu for dessert. The house smelled amazing, and Marcus seemed to think that meant everything was back to normal. He'd been trying to sweet-talk me all week, bringing me flowers, offering to take me out to dinner, acting like nothing had happened. "Eva, sweetheart, maybe we should talk about last weekend," he'd said on Thursday night, using that gentle, condescending tone he employed whenever he thought I was being emotional. "What's to talk about?" I'd replied, not looking up from the financial documents I was organizing. "You made your position very clear." I was drunk. I said things I didn't mean. "You know I love you." Love. But the same love that had him planning to leave me penniless while he rode off into the sunset with his 25-year-old girlfriend. By the time his family arrived on Sunday, Marcus was practically glowing with confidence. In his mind, he'd called my bluff and won. I was still there, still cooking his family dinner, still playing the role of the perfect wife. He probably thought he'd scared me back into line with his threats about the accounts and the prenup. If only he knew what I had planned for dessert. Dinner went normally at first. His mother complained about her neighbors. His father told the same stories he told every month. His sister updated everyone on her kids' activities. Marcus regaled them with tales from his challenging work life, carefully editing out any mention of his extracurricular activities. I played my part perfectly. Smiling, nodding, refilling wine glasses, laughing at all the right moments. Just like I had for 8 years. But when it came time for dessert, I had an announcement to make. Before we have tiramisu, I said, standing up from my seat at the foot of the table, I have something I'd like to share with everyone. Marcus looked at me with mild curiosity. Eva, what? I'm getting a divorce, I said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's mother actually dropped her wine glass, sending red wine cascading across the white tablecloth. His father's face went purple. His sister's mouth fell open. Eva, Marcus said, his voice tight with warning. This isn't the time or place. Actually, it's the perfect time and place. I walked over to the sideboard where I'd placed a stack of folders earlier, under the guise of clearing space for dinner. See, I wanted Marcus's family to know exactly why I'm leaving him. I thought they deserved to hear the truth about their golden boy. Sit down, Marcus hissed, but I was already distributing folders around the table. What's this? His sister asked, opening the folder in front of her. Evidence, I said calmly. Bank statements showing how Marcus has been stealing money from our joint accounts to fund his affair with a woman named Riley Peterson. Email printouts where he discusses his plans to leave me with nothing. Photos of receipts for jewelry and hotel rooms that I certainly never benefited from. The room erupted. His mother started crying. His father started shouting. His sister was flipping through pages with growing horror. The kids didn't understand what was happening, but they knew it was bad. And Marcus was sitting there with his mouth hanging open, watching his perfect little world crumble around him. There's also a recording, I continued, pulling out my phone. From last weekend, when Marcus dared me to leave him. Would you like to hear how your son talks about his wife when he thinks no one is listening? Eva, stop, Marcus said, his voice breaking. Please. Why? Asked, genuinely curious. Aren't you proud of how clever you've been? Aren't you excited to tell your family about Riley? I'm sure they'd love to meet her. His mother looked up from the bank statements, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Marcus, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this. But Marcus couldn't say anything because we all knew it was true. Every document, every email, every receipt told the same story. Of a man who'd spent months planning to betray the woman who'd stood by him for 8 years. I want everyone to leave, he said finally. His voice barely above a whisper. Actually, I said, sitting back down at my place. This is my house too. Least for now. If anyone's leaving, it's you. That's when Marcus finally snapped. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. His face twisted with rage. You vindictive bitch, he screamed. You planned this. You've been planning this. Yes, I said calmly. Just like you've been planning to destroy me. The difference is, I'm doing it honestly. His father tried to intervene, but Marcus was beyond reasoning. 8 years of careful manipulation and control, and I destroyed it all in one dinner conversation. You want to know the truth? Marcus shouted, looking around the table at his horrified family. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing someone else. Yes, I moved some money around. But do you know what it's like being married to her? Do you know how boring and needy and pathetic she is? The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking, but I didn't flinch. I'd been expecting this, the moment when his mask finally came off completely. She killed my dreams, he continued, his voice getting louder and more desperate. I could have been something great, but instead I'm stuck with this mediocre life and this mediocre woman who can't even give me children. That last part hit like a physical blow. We'd been trying for children for 3 years. 3 years of fertility treatments and disappointment, and quietly grieving the family we thought we'd have someday. He'd held me through so many nights when I cried about it, told me it didn't matter, that we had time. Apparently, it mattered enough for him to throw it in my face in front of his entire family. His sister spoke first. Marcus, that's enough. No. He was completely unhinged now. You want to know who Riley is? She's everything Eva isn't. She's young and beautiful and successful, and she doesn't spend her days counting pennies and asking permission to buy groceries. She's also 25 years old and sleeping with a married man for his money, I said quietly. But I suppose that makes her successful in your eyes. The room fell silent except for the sound of his mother crying. Marcus stood there, chest heaving, looking around at his family with wild eyes. His father spoke next, his voice cold and disgusted. "Get out, Dad." I said, "Get out. I don't want to see you again until you've figured out how to be a decent human being." Marcus looked around the room one more time, searching for any ally, any support. But there was none. His own family was looking at him like they didn't recognize him. "Fine," he said finally. "I don't need any of you. I don't need her. I'll be better off without all of you." He stormed out of the dining room, and a few minutes later, we heard the front door slam. Then the sound of his car starting, tires squealing as he backed out of the driveway. The silence that followed was heavy with shock and grief. These people had thought they knew Marcus. They'd loved him, supported him, been proud of him. And I'd just shown them who he really was. His mother looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Eva, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I know," I said softly. "Neither did I until recently." "What will you do now?" his sister asked. I looked around the table at these people who'd been my family for 8 years, who probably wouldn't be my family much longer, and felt a strange sense of peace. "I'm going to rebuild my life," I said. "And this time I'm going to do it on my terms." The divorce was brutal, but not in the way Marcus had planned. See, when you're a forensic accountant married to someone who's been hiding assets, you have a significant advantage in divorce proceedings. Especially when that someone has left a digital trail of evidence showing premeditated financial fraud. Marcus's lawyer tried every trick in the book. The prenup, the claims that I was vindictive and unstable, the argument that his affair was a symptom of our marital problems rather than the cause. But it's hard to argue with bank records and recorded confessions. The hidden accounts, frozen and traced back to their sources. The money he'd moved offshore, recovered and documented. The Tiffany necklace and all the other gifts he'd bought Riley with our money, itemized and added to his debt. Riley, it turned out, was less loyal than Marcus had hoped. When the financial investigations started and her own accounts got scrutinized, she decided that a married man with legal troubles wasn't worth the hassle. She broke up with him via text message and moved to California. Marcus tried to come back to me, of course. When his perfect plan fell apart and his girlfriend disappeared and his family disowned him, suddenly I didn't look so mediocre anymore. He showed up at the house 3 months after that disastrous Sunday dinner, looking haggard and desperate. He'd been staying in a cheap hotel, living off credit cards, trying to find a new job after word of his behavior reached his current employer. "Eva, please," he said, standing on our front porch like a stranger. "I made a mistake. I was going through something, a midlife crisis or something. It wasn't real. You're my wife. We can work through this." I looked at him through the screen door, this man I'd loved for so long, and felt nothing but pity. "Marcus," I said gently, "you dared me to leave. Remember?" I was angry. "I didn't mean it." "Yes, you did. You meant every word." I opened the door not to let him in, but so he could see me clearly. "And you know what? You were right about one thing. I was weak. I was dependent. I had lost myself in this marriage." Hope flickered in his eyes. "So you understand." "I understand that leaving you was the best thing I ever did for myself." The hope died. "Eva, don't do this. We can start over. I'll do counseling, I'll change, You'll what? You'll stop being the person you really are." I shook my head. "Marcus, you didn't have an affair because you were going through a crisis. You had an affair because you're selfish. You didn't hide money because you were confused. You hid money because you're dishonest. You didn't talk to me the way you did because you were drunk. You talk to me that way because that's how you really see me." He started crying then, actual tears streaming down his face. "Please don't do this. I love you." "No, you don't," I said firmly. "You love the idea of me. You love having someone to control and manipulate and blame for your problems. You love having a safety net, someone who'll always be there to clean up your messes and make excuses for your behavior. But you don't love me. I stepped back and started to close the door. Eva, wait. The papers will be final next month, I said. Don't contact me again. And I closed the door on 8 years of my life. The rebirth. A year later, I barely recognized the woman I used to be. Kept the house. Turns out, when your husband commits financial fraud during the marriage, the court isn't very sympathetic to his property claims. I also got most of our savings, including every penny of my grandmother's inheritance that he'd stolen, plus interest and damages. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was discovering who I was when I wasn't trying to be the perfect wife. I started my own forensic accounting firm 6 months after the divorce was final. Turns out, there's a huge market for someone who specializes in uncovering hidden assets in high-conflict divorces. My first client was a woman whose husband had been doing exactly what Marcus tried to do. Moving money, hiding accounts, setting up his ex-wife to walk away with nothing. We got her everything she deserved and more. My business grew quickly through word of mouth. Apparently, there are a lot of women out there married to men like Marcus. Men who think their wives are too weak or too stupid or too dependent to fight back. They're all wrong. I bought a new car last month. A red Porsche convertible that I'd admired for years but never dreamed of owning. Marcus would have called it impractical, flashy, a waste of money. He would have made me feel guilty for even wanting it. Now I drive it to work every day with the top down, and every time I catch my reflection in a storefront window, I remember what freedom looks like. I've started dating again, though I'm in no hurry. I'm learning to enjoy my own company first, to remember what my opinions are when I'm not constantly deferring to someone else's preferences. I'm taking art classes and learning Spanish and traveling to places I've always wanted to see. Last month I went to Italy by myself. Rome, Florence, Venice. All the cities I dreamed of visiting during those long, lonely years when Marcus was working late, or networking, or doing whatever else he called his betrayals. I sat in a cafe in the Piazza Navona, drinking wine and eating gelato at 10 in the morning because I could, and I thought about that night when Marcus dared me to leave. He thought he was calling my bluff. He thought he knew exactly who I was. Weak, dependent, too scared to start over. He thought I'd back down, accept his terms, let him continue treating me like I was lucky to be married to him. But here's what Marcus never understood. I wasn't weak. I was careful. I wasn't dependent. I was loyal. I wasn't too scared to start over. I was too invested in our marriage to give up without a fight. Until he gave me no choice. The dare that was meant to put me in my place ended up setting me free. The financial manipulation that was supposed to leave me with nothing ended up making me financially independent. The public humiliation that was designed to break me ended up showing me exactly who I was when I stopped trying to be who everyone else wanted me to be. I got a text from Marcus's sister a few weeks ago. Apparently, he's engaged to someone new, a woman he met at a bar who doesn't know about Riley or the divorce or any of it. His family is planning to boycott the wedding. I didn't respond to the text. Marcus's life, his choices, his consequences. None of it has anything to do with me anymore. But I did save the message because it reminded me of something important. Marcus hasn't changed. He's still the same man who dared his wife to leave rather than face the consequences of his own behavior. He's still the same man who thinks love means control and marriage means ownership. He's just someone else's problem now. And me. I'm no longer anyone's problem but my own. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled the divorce. If I think I went too far, if I should have tried harder to save my marriage, if I should have been more forgiving. The answer is simple, hell no. Marcus made a calculated decision to betray me. He planned it, executed it, and then had the audacity to dare me to do something about it. He thought he held all the cards, thought he could control the narrative, thought he could make me the villain in the story of our marriage. He was wrong about all of it. I didn't destroy my marriage. Marcus did, the moment he decided that our vows meant nothing, that our shared future was worth less than his immediate gratification, that I was disposable. I just made sure he couldn't pretend otherwise. The woman I am now would terrify the woman I was 2 years ago. That woman apologized for taking up space, asked permission to have opinions, made herself smaller so everyone else could feel bigger. She lived her life on other people's terms and called it love. This woman takes up exactly as much space as she deserves. She makes decisions based on what she wants, not what everyone else expects. She builds her life on her own terms and calls it freedom. And when someone dares her to leave, she doesn't just leave. She burns the whole thing down and builds something better from the ashes. Marcus thought he knew me. He thought 8 years of marriage meant he could predict my every move, manipulate my every response, control my every decision. But he forgot something important. People grow. People change. People get tired of being treated like they're worth nothing. And sometimes when you dare someone to prove you wrong about who they are, they'll surprise you. I sure as hell surprised him. The last I heard, Marcus was telling people that I was crazy, vindictive, that I overreacted to his mistake, that I destroyed our marriage over something that could have been worked out. Let him tell that story. Let him believe it even. 'Cause I know the truth. I know that I didn't destroy anything that wasn't already broken. I didn't overreact to a mistake. I responded appropriately to a betrayal. I didn't choose divorce because I wanted to hurt him. I chose divorce because I finally understood that I deserved better. And every morning when I wake up in my house, in my bed, in my life that I built from nothing, I remember that I was right to take that dare. The funny thing about small towns, and yes, our perfect suburban neighborhood might as well be a small town, is that everyone knows everyone's business. And when someone's business involves public humiliation at a family dinner, recorded confessions, and a very messy divorce, that business becomes the stuff of local legend. I found this out when I ran into Marcus's former colleague, David, at the grocery store. David had worked with Marcus for 5 years, had been to our house for barbecues, had always seemed like a decent guy. "Eva," he called out as I was examining avocados in the produce section. "I've been meaning to reach out to you." I turned around, prepared for the awkward small talk that had become routine since the divorce. Most people didn't know what to say to me. Was I the victim they should pity, or the vindictive ex-wife they should avoid? But David surprised me. "I owe you an apology," he said, his face serious. "We all do. I'm sorry. At the office, we knew something was going on with Marcus. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the way he'd been acting. Hell, Riley used to call him at work constantly. But we looked the other way. Told ourselves it wasn't our business. I felt a familiar knot form in my stomach. Riley called him at work. All the time. And Marcus would take the calls, even during meetings. He'd step out and come back 20 minutes later with this stupid grin on his face. David shook his head. We used to joke about it. About how Marcus had gotten himself a girlfriend. Like it was funny. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. A whole office full of people who knew my husband was cheating, who watched him take calls from his mistress, who turned our marriage into a joke. "Why are you telling me this?" Yes. Because after everything came out, I realized what we'd been part of. We enabled him, Eva. Every time we covered for him when he left early, every time we laughed about his girlfriend, every time we pretended not to notice, we were helping him hurt you. I set down the avocado I'd been holding, suddenly not hungry anymore. "There's something else," David continued, looking uncomfortable. "The company let him go last month. Officially it was downsizing. Unofficially. Well, let's just say that having your personal life explode that publicly doesn't look good for someone in client relations. I shouldn't have felt satisfaction at that news, but I did. Marcus had always prided himself on his professional reputation, his networking abilities, his charm with clients. The idea that his behavior had finally caught up with him professionally felt like justice. "I heard he's been applying everywhere," David added. "But word gets around, you know? Especially in our industry. No one wants to hire someone who might bring that kind of drama to their workplace." After David left, I stood there in the produce section for a long time, processing what he'd told me. An entire office full of people had watched Marcus betray me and done nothing. They'd made it into entertainment, something to whisper about and laugh over during coffee breaks. But what bothered me more than their complicity was the realization of how isolated I'd been. While Marcus was taking calls from Riley at work, while his colleagues were joking about his affair, while everyone in his professional life knew what was happening, I was home making dinner and wondering why my husband seemed so distant lately. I'd been living in a bubble of lies so complete that I was probably the last person in town to know about my husband's double life. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, his voice eager and hopeful. "Eva, is everything okay? I ran into David today," I said without preamble. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. "Eva, listen. How many people knew Marcus?" "I don't know what you mean. How many people knew about Riley? How many people at your office, in our neighborhood, in our social circle knew that you were cheating on me while I was home playing the perfect wife?" Another silence, longer this time. "It wasn't like that," he said finally. "Then what was it like?" "Because according to David, Riley was calling you at work constantly. During meetings, Marcus. You'd step out of meetings to talk to your mistress." "She wasn't my mistress." "What was she then?" "Your business partner. Your life coach. Your fucking spiritual advisor." I never used to swear. Marcus hated profanity, said it was unbecoming. Just another way he'd shape me into someone he could control. "You want to know what the worst part is?" I continued before he could answer. "It's not even the cheating. It's the humiliation. It's knowing that for months, maybe years, I was the pathetic wife who didn't know what everyone else knew. I was the punchline to jokes I wasn't even aware were being told." "Eva, please. I was so worried about being a good wife to you that I didn't notice I'd become a laughingstock. Do you know how that feels, Marcus? Do you have any idea what it's like to realize that the life you thought you were living was just a performance for an audience that was laughing behind your back?" When he didn't answer, I hung up. But I wasn't done. The next morning I called my lawyer. "I need to reopen discovery," I told him. "I think there's more we didn't find. Eva, the divorce is final. Unless there's evidence of hidden assets that we can prove existed at the time." "There is," I said. "I'm sure of it. Because here's what I'd realized during that sleepless night after my conversation with David. If Marcus had been that brazen about his affair at work, if he'd been that careless about letting people know, then he'd probably been careless about other things too." I spent the weekend going through everything again. Every bank statement, every credit card bill, every receipt I'd found. But this time, I wasn't looking for evidence of the affair. I was looking for patterns. And I found them. Regular cash withdrawals, always on Fridays, always for the same amount. Restaurant charges that were too expensive for lunch meetings but too early for dinner dates. Hotel bookings in cities where I knew he had no business meetings. All paid for with our joint credit card. Marcus hadn't just been having an affair with Riley. He'd been having affairs, plural. Multiple women, multiple relationships, multiple lies. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Riley wasn't special. She wasn't the love of his life that had made him forget his vows and lose his mind. She was just the latest in what appeared to be a long line of women. I called the private investigator my lawyer had recommended months ago, but that I'd decided I didn't need. Turns out I'd been wrong about that too. "How far back do you want me to look?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "All of it," I said. "From the beginning of our marriage." The report took 2 weeks to compile. And when it arrived, I understood why Marcus had been so confident about his ability to manipulate me. He'd had 8 years of practice. The affairs had started 18 months after our wedding. A colleague from his first job, then a client, then a woman he'd met at a conference. Some lasted weeks, others months. He had a type, young, ambitious, impressed by his success and his charm. He'd gotten sloppy with Riley because she'd lasted longer than the others, because he'd started to believe he was untouchable. But she wasn't his first betrayal. She was just his final one. Reading through the investigator's report was like watching my entire marriage through new eyes. Business trips that hadn't been business trips. Late nights at the office that had been late nights in hotel rooms. Weekend conferences that had been weekend getaways. 8 years of lies. 8 years of thinking I was married to a man who was basically a stranger. But the worst part wasn't the scope of his deception. The worst part was the money. Because every affair had cost money. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, travel. And that money had come from our joint accounts, from the savings we were supposed to be building toward our future, from the inheritance I'd trusted him with. Marcus hadn't just been cheating on me. He'd been stealing from me to pay for the privilege. I waited until I had everything organized before I called him again. Financial records, private investigator's report, timeline of affairs dating back to the 2nd year of our marriage. Everything laid out like evidence in a criminal case. Which, in a way, it was. "We need to meet," I told him when he answered the phone. "Eva, I don't think that's a good idea. The divorce is final, we should both move on. Marcus, you have exactly 2 choices. You can meet with me voluntarily, or you can explain to a judge why you've been committing financial fraud for the better part of 8 years. The meeting was at my lawyer's office, which was probably the only thing that kept Marcus from trying to charm or manipulate his way out of the situation. The presence of legal counsel has a way of focusing people's attention. I laid out everything methodically. The timeline of affairs, the financial evidence, the pattern of deception that had started almost from the beginning of our marriage. Marcus sat there in silence, watching his carefully constructed lies fall apart piece by piece. His lawyer kept shooting him looks that clearly said, "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" When I finished, the silence stretched for what felt like forever. Finally Marcus's lawyer spoke. "What do you want?" "Restitution," my lawyer answered. "Full accounting of all money spent on extramarital affairs over the course of the marriage, plus interest and punitive damages." That's. Marcus's lawyer was calculating in his head. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. "Try again," I said quietly. "It's closer to $500,000. Marcus finally found his voice. "Eva, you can't be serious. The divorce is over. You got the house, most of the savings. I got what was legally mine after you spent years stealing from our joint accounts to fund your affairs." I slid a folder across the table. "This is every hotel charge, every dinner, every gift, every trip you paid for with money that belonged to both of us. Money that should have gone toward our retirement, our future, our plans." He opened the folder and his face went white. "The investigator was very thorough," I continued. "She found receipts going back to 2016. That emerald bracelet you bought someone named Jessica? $2,000 from our savings account. That weekend in Napa with someone called Michelle? $3,000, charged to our joint credit card while you told me you were at a work retreat." "Eva, please. I'm not finished." I pulled out another folder. This is the psychological evaluation I had done. Turns out, being systematically lied to and financially abused for 8 years has some lasting effects. Depression, anxiety, trust issues. The therapist thinks it'll take years of treatment to undo the damage. Marcus looked like he might be sick. "What do you want me to say?" "I'm sorry. I made mistakes. I want you to understand something," I said, leaning forward. "You didn't make mistakes, Marcus. You made choices. Hundreds of them, thousands of them, over the course of 8 years. Every time you decided to meet another woman, every time you spent our money on your affairs, every time you came home and lied to my face about where you'd been. Those were choices." I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the weight of it all. "And now I'm making a choice. I'm choosing to hold you accountable for every single one of them." The settlement took 6 months to negotiate, but in the end, Marcus paid. Every penny he'd stolen, plus interest, plus damages for the emotional trauma his behavior had caused. He had to sell his car, liquidate his retirement accounts, and take out a loan against his future earnings. The woman he'd been engaged to left him when she found out about the financial settlement and the real reason for his divorce. I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved to another state, taken a job with a significant pay cut, and was living in a studio apartment. I felt exactly zero sympathy for him. 2 years after that final confrontation, I was sitting in my office. My own office, in the building I'd purchased with the settlement money, when my assistant buzzed me. "There's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." I looked up from the financial analysis I'd been working on. "Did she say what it's about?" "A divorce case. She says she thinks her husband is hiding assets." Smiled. "Send her in." The woman who walked through my door was probably in her early 30s, well-dressed but with a kind of haunted look I'd learned to recognize. The look of someone who'd been gaslighted so thoroughly that she'd started to doubt her own perceptions. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said hesitantly. "My name is Jennifer. Jennifer Walsh. I think I need your help." "Please sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Tell me what's going on." Her story was depressingly familiar. A husband who'd become secretive, unexplained expenses, passwords changed without explanation. But she was smart. She'd started documenting things, keeping copies of statements, taking photos of receipts she'd found. "I know this sounds paranoid," she said, pulling a folder from her purse. "But I have this feeling that he's planning something. He's been talking about how I should focus on my health instead of working, how we don't really need two incomes. Last week, he suggested I quit my job." I took the folder and started looking through the documents she'd brought. Bank statements, credit card bills, photos of receipts. The signs were all there. The classic pattern of financial manipulation that preceded divorce. "Jennifer," I said gently, "how long have you been married?" 6 years next month." "And when did this behavior start?" She thought about it. "Maybe 8 months ago. But looking back, there were probably signs before that. Little things that I explained away." I nodded, feeling a familiar anger building in my chest. Another woman, another marriage, another man who thought he could manipulate and control and steal without consequences. "I want you to know," I said, looking her directly in the eyes, "that you're not paranoid. You're not overreacting. And you're not powerless." The relief on her face was heartbreaking. "Really? Really? In fact, based on what you've shown me, I think we can not only protect your assets, but we can probably prove that he's been stealing from you. Which means he'll have to pay it all back." 2 hours later, Jennifer left my office with a strategy, a timeline, and most importantly, hope. She'd also left with my card and a promise that she could call me any time, day or night, if she needed support. As I watched her walk to her car through my office window, I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago. Scared, isolated, convinced that I was the problem in my marriage. If someone had told that woman that she'd end up running her own business, helping other women escape situations like hers, she would never have believed it. But that's the thing about rock bottom, it gives you a solid foundation to build from. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my assistant. "I have the Peterson case files ready for your review, and there's someone from Channel 7 online too. They want to interview you for a story they're doing about financial abuse in marriage." "Tell Channel 7 I'll call them back in an hour," I said. "And bring me the Peterson files." As I waited for the files, I thought about Marcus. I wondered if he ever saw the news stories about my business, the interviews I'd been doing about financial abuse, the women I'd helped recover millions of dollars from manipulative spouses. I wondered if he ever realized that his cruel, confident assumption that I was too weak to leave, had created the woman who was now helping other women defeat men exactly like him. Probably not. Men like Marcus rarely develop that kind of self-awareness. But it didn't matter what he thought anymore. What mattered was Jennifer, and the woman who would sit in my office tomorrow, and all the women who would come after them. What mattered was proving, over and over again, that we're stronger than they think we are. And that sometimes when someone dares you to leave, the best revenge is not just leaving, it's thriving. Last month I got an invitation in the mail that made me laugh out loud. It was to Marcus's wedding. His third attempt at marriage, apparently, since the investigator had mentioned wife number 2 during our last legal proceeding. The invitation was expensive. Heavy cardstock, gold lettering, all the trappings of someone trying very hard to project success. It was also addressed to my old married name, which told me everything I needed to know about how much attention Marcus paid to details. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. The bride was someone named Stephanie, and according to the engagement announcement I looked up online, she was 26 years old and worked in marketing. The same age I'd been when I married Marcus. I felt a moment of genuine pity for Stephanie, whoever she was. Because Marcus would do to her exactly what he'd done to me. Slowly, systematically, over years. He'd make her doubt herself, make her small, make her dependent. He'd steal from her and lie to her and dare her to do something about it. The only question was whether she'd be strong enough to take the dare. I didn't RSVP to the wedding, but I did do something else. I wrote Stephanie a letter. Not a long one and not a detailed one. Just a simple note letting her know that if she ever found herself confused about money going missing, or passwords being changed, or feeling like she was going crazy, she wasn't alone. I included my business card and a single line. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. I mailed it to her work address. Easier to find than her home address, and less likely to be intercepted by Marcus. I don't know if she'll ever need it. I hope she won't. But if she does, she'll know where to find help. That's all any of us can do, really. Survive our own storms and then throw life preservers to the women still drowning in theirs. As for me, I'm living a life I couldn't have imagined when Marcus made his dare 5 years ago. I own my own company, my own home, my own choices. I travel where I want, eat what I want, spend my money how I want. I answer to no one but myself. Last year I bought a vacation house in the mountains. It's small but perfect. All windows and light, with a view of the valley that takes my breath away every single morning. I go there when I need to remember who I am when I'm not fighting other people's battles. I'm dating someone now. Someone who knew my story before our first date and thought it made me interesting rather than damaged. Someone who celebrates my independence instead of trying to diminish it. Someone who would never ever dare me to leave, because he knows I would, and he's too smart to test me. Sometimes when I'm sitting on my deck watching the sunrise over the mountains, I think about that night 5 years ago when Marcus stood in our bedroom and dared me to walk away from everything we'd built together. He thought he was calling my bluff. He thought he knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. He was wrong about both. The woman he married was weak, dependent, afraid to rock the boat. The woman he dared to leave was someone else entirely. Someone who'd been forged by years of manipulation and betrayal into something much stronger and more dangerous than he could have imagined. Marcus had created his own worst nightmare. A woman with nothing left to lose and all the skills necessary to destroy him. And you know what the beautiful irony is? He did it by underestimating me. He created the very weapon that would be used against him. Through years of making me small and quiet and invisible. But small, quiet, invisible women see everything. We hear everything. We remember everything. And sometimes when someone finally pushes us too far, we use everything. I kept Marcus's dare. I left just like he told me to. But I didn't leave quietly. I didn't leave broken. I didn't leave empty-handed. I left victorious. And I've been winning ever since. The truth is, when someone dares you to show them who you really are, you should thank them for the opportunity. Because sometimes you don't know your own strength until someone forces you to use it. I'm stronger than I ever imagined possible, and I have my ex-husband to thank for that. His cruelty revealed my courage. His betrayal revealed my resilience. His dare revealed my power. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you for showing me exactly who you were, and for giving me the chance to show you exactly who I am. It just wasn't who either of us expected me to be. Thank you for watching. If you want more videos like this, please like, subscribe and share.